Hello and welcome to episode 5 of the Old Angry Man's Club. Just joking, you've tuned in to the Kickin Tyres podcast. This is episode 5. As always, I'm Adam Gray, one of the co-hosts, and as always, I'm joined by the ever so lovely Tim Barnes-Clay. And I say that through gritted teeth because we're both in a bit of a stinker, aren't we, today?
Adam, I can see why you have worked in PR in your past. You are a very kind man. Thank you very much. Well, actually, I'm not in too bad a mood. I think, I'm recovering from a car launch that we'll talk about in a minute. But also, we went to SMMT Test Day last week, didn't we? On, Thursday, 21st of May, something like that.
Correct.
SMMT, for anyone that's not in this industry, it stands for Society, or the Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders. And every year at Millbrook Proving Ground in Bedfordshire, there is a main event where journalists get to test cars, although increasingly it's not just journalists, it's, people who might just have an interest, a passing interest in cars, but have high figures on social media and blah, blah. But this year, it was quite a different year because I didn't see as many legacy brands there as usual. Did you, Adam?
No, I didn't, and I'm going to get into that. But before I do that, do me a favour, bring your mic up a little bit more, please.
Oh, yes, I will.
You seem a little bit distant.
Distant. I mean,
we have
occasionally.
had some technical issues. I'll be honest here. For full transparency, we've had an absolute mare. That's not added to the fact that we're already in a stinker of a mood, aren't we, Tim? We've been bitching to each other today on message.
Wow. And your your teeth have been falling out as well, haven't they?
My teeth have been falling out, yeah. I can't talk properly. But yes, anyway, back to SMMT Test Day. This is what this episode's going to be all about. We're going to do a shorter episode today as well. SMMT. Yeah, I noticed that. There was a distinct lack of the legacy brands. Off the top of my head, no Mercedes, no Audi, no Polestar, no Renault, no Alpine, no Skoda, no Mazda. Anybody else? Have I missed anybody?
The list goes on. I mean, it used to be Rolls-Royce, Bentley used to be there. But yeah, the sort of bread and butter legacy brands, as they're known, real disappointment, really. Skoda was unveiling a car, so wasn't a disappointment for them. Mercedes had a launch of the GLC Electric the day before that I'd attended. And it was a shame, really, because SMMT is an event that really, yes, it's about driving cars, but actually for professional journalists that already have quite a good connection and do that a lot, it's about catching up with some PRs who are, let's just say, sometimes not as reachable as you'd like them to be. Sometimes the conversation goes one way. Just very occasionally that can happen. And it's nice to see people in person. But hey,
I don't honestly believe that could happen, Tim.
It's the horror.
You shocked me with that statement that some PRs don't. It's one way traffic when it comes to communication.
Yeah. And because you've worked in PR, look, I'm not trying to teach Granny to suck eggs. By the way, PR stands for public relations, or if you want to talk about media relations. Anyway, the media landscape's always changing. Whatever. If you're in the 70s, video was coming along at the back end of that decade. People worried. Would people watch TV as much? Would people go to the cinema? Oh, would people turn the radio off? And there was that famous song from the Buggles, "Video Killed the Radio Star," blah, 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 blah. Every decade, every generation has to deal with change, the horror of change, eh? So you and me, we've been dealing with this change that's been going on for at least a decade, more, almost 20 years, really. If you think about social media, Facebook coming out in 06, 07, it became popular, certainly in the UK. But the rise of social media and platforms, and just the way that people digest the media, social media influencers have become a thing over the last few years. So some PR people within certain brands just switch off their media relations that they used to have with you. I mean, I've not spoken to some people for a while, and they go, "Oh, we were busy." Well, I'm pretty busy as well, But it might be horror of horrors working in communications that they just don't really want to work with me anymore or with you because we might be seen as, dare I say it, traditionalists. Well, this is why we've started this podcast, because we're not just writers. This is a kind of a quasi broadcast medium, isn't it? Podcasting. But I still have a radio station that I do cast stuff on, old school style, as well as writing. And also I co-present a channel on YouTube called Which EV. You do a lot of stuff on TikTok. You've also been on video with other channels you've worked with. So anyway, what I'm trying to say is this. It would have been lovely to have caught up actually with a human being, as in, "Hi, how are you? I know you've not got my last 1,000 emails because you've been busy. However, could you just tell me, is it me or is it not? The outlets are rightful. Are they not really cutting the mustard anymore? Do you need me to be a social media influencer? What is it?" I'm just going off on a little tangent here. All I'm saying is that, guys, we all work within communications, and yet a lot of the time we fail to actually communicate with each other. I'm a big boy. I'm over 50. Tell me to F off. If you don't want to talk to me anymore, tell me I'm not relevant. I'd handle that better than being ghosted. Sorry about that. Just thought I'd mention it. Adam, can you relate to this?
Have you got off your high horse now?
Well, kind of. I mean, it's only a living that I'm trying to create out of this.
Yeah.
But
God.
and I'm a bit of an adult now, and it's actually, I live nearer to Milton Keynes. I'm not going to mention too many brands, but it'd be quite nice to sort of just go along and say, "Hi, how are you?" It'd be easier, wouldn't it, than actually waiting for a frigging email to come back. But anyway, no one answers the phone anymore, do they? So there's no point actually ringing anyone. But
No.
I'm not going to be ungrateful, because there are lots and lots and lots of brands out there that do really stellar communication work. And I know, and that you cannot contact everybody all the time. And I think PR people are probably just going bang, because every week there's another outlet trying to get a press car or trying to get on an event, trying to do a launch. But, you've been around a long time doing this. I first got a press car in 1996, so 30 years, but that probably makes me an old guy now. Maybe, I don't know. But I think the quality of these guys, they want to push clearly their brands out as far and wide as possible. So, they've got to cut across the spectrum, haven't they, of social media, print, digital, visual, audio, podcasting. And then, of course, do they even want the earned media? We're all about, what we actually think about a car. Do they just want to pay people? And I'm not just talking about car brands. It's well known. People pay people these days to go and say how awesome something is. But if you see the same person telling the same audience how awesome every product is, after a while, doesn't that lose a little bit of credibility? It's an advert, isn't it? So, everything's awesome. It's not, is it? It's not real. But then the consumer, like my kids, they probably don't care. They just want to know if something, I want an iPhone, whatever it is now. I just want loads of people to say it's great, and then they'll believe it. Maybe that's the way it's going. Maybe it's becoming more marketing led. I don't know. What are your thoughts on this, Adam? I'm just playing devil's advocate here.
Thanks for getting that off your chest, Tim. For that little rant that you've just gone on there. No, I laugh, I joke, and it does raise a serious point. I think from an outsider's perspective, friends, family, and you'll be able to relate to this. I think people think as motoring journalists, we can get access to pretty much any car that we want, and we can get them dead quickly and have them for as long as we want. That's not how this job works, right? I've lost count of how many times I'll tell you now, I can count on one hand how many times a manufacturer has actually approached me and said, "Do you want to test this car?" Or, yeah. It really, the way that this works is you approach the PR people and you say, "Listen, I'd love to review this vehicle. What's the chances of getting access to one?" And the conversation starts there. And this really doesn't matter how well you know this PR person, what existing relationship is in place. Um, then they want to know, and I remember I wind back the clock back to when I started this game, right? I remember then I worked for Trinity Mirror, Reach PLC, formerly Trinity Mirror. And back then I had 4 newspapers in the region that I worked, the Northeast. I had 2 websites as well. And I would go back to the PR. The first thing they'd say to me is, okay, before I agree to loan you a car, I want you to tell me what your circulation figures are for your newspapers, and we want to know what your readership figures are on your website. And I'd quite proudly go back with those. And they stood me in good stead, to be honest, with the vast majority of brands because they were pretty impressive figures. So I didn't have that much trouble getting them to agree to loan me the cars. But I moved on from there, and not every publication that I've worked for, whether it be a digital publication, whether it be a print publication, has had the numbers to kind of back up or quantify, justify getting access to a car. And I have struggled, and it continues to be a problem to this day. It's not helped by the fact, and this goes back to the point that you raised, Tim, that we work in communication, the PRs work in communication. They just sit on the other side of the fence, so to speak. And I think it'll always baffle me how many people work in PR and work in journalism, because I'm not going to dig out the PRs because that wouldn't be fair. I'll dig out journalists as well because I've worked in PR. I'm bad at communicating, and I mean seriously bad at communicating. And like yourself, Tim, we want it straight, right? If you don't want to loan me a car because my readership figures aren't what you need them to be, or whatever, then just tell me straight. I'd prefer for you to be open and honest with me on an email, and you just or on a phone call and tell me thanks but no thanks, and I'll focus my attentions elsewhere. But it's a massive waste of my time, and it's also a massive waste of their time, me constantly chasing them on email. And if I don't get response in email, trying them on social media, because some of them are on socials, or sending them a WhatsApp or whatever it may be. It is incredibly frustrating. But it's actually funny that we're talking about this, right? Because I from SMMT, I didn't go there really to test drive many cars. We test drove a handful together, didn't we?
Yeah.
In reality, you don't get particularly long with the cars to be able to write a thorough, in-depth review. 15, 20 minutes, half an hour at the very most that you get with these models. So that wasn't my focus of attending SMMT. My focus was to network with the PRs and to catch up with some, peers in the industry. And it was successful in that sense, although, as we said, a lot of the legacy brands were missing. But I did chat to quite a few PRs who mentioned Kickin Tyres,
It did,
which
didn't
was
they?
interesting. They
Yeah.
did, and they were very, very kind about what we're trying to do with this podcast, and no doubt some of them may be listening to this episode when it goes out. So,
I mean, they might
um,
be. They might be, or they might. It's a bit like a bloody busman's holiday for them listening to this in their spare time. I mean, they must
I
be going
know, yeah.
bonkers, bonkers the amount of times
You
that
know why they're not replying to our emails? They're too busy listening to our bloody podcast. That's why.
that's what it is. You imagine that if you were in PR now and you had, like you've just said, okay, so you've got emails, phone calls that never happen anymore, and
Mm,
WhatsApp and all sorts of ways, direct messages on social media.
yeah.
I get it. I totally get it. Having worked in PR for 10 years, although it wasn't in automotive, but the principle's the same. There are some journalists, it's called media relations. Media relations is a very important thing to have still because it's earned media. It's not paid for media, as in you're not paying someone to say how brilliant a car is. You're actually lending them a car or inviting them on a car launch and you're saying, drive it. And ultimately, what outlets pay you and me for is our opinion, as actual human opinion. And
Mm.
so I think it's valid. And I think the end consumer will always appreciate that over someone who's saying, oh, this is great. Because I can tell the difference, can you, between someone who's pretending it's great and not actually thinking it's great?
So this is a conversation that I had with a PR last week at SMMT, this exact conversation.
Yeah.
And he said, I passed comment to him that I was quite shocked that quite a few legacy brands weren't in attendance. And he said, well, why do you think that's the case? And my opinion is, I think some of those legacy brands didn't attend because I feel that they don't need, I'll start again, sorry. I believe that they think they don't need to attend events like that because they've got lots of interest in their product. They've probably got quite small press fleets because that's something we hear all the time, isn't it? Oh, our press fleets are quite small, so you'll have a wait to get access to a car, which is fine. That's understandable. Or our budgets have been cut back. That's another one of the trump cards that they like to play that you can't seem to argue with. But I genuinely believe that they feel that there's that much interest in the product already. They don't need to attend. And from what I understand, it isn't a cheap event to exhibit at. So that's kind of fair enough if,
Yeah.
if we're watching money. But I was talking to this particular PR as well about, and mentioned, I said, some brands, I get the distinct impression, their focus is very much on building relationships with content creators and influencers. They see
Yeah.
that is the way forward for coverage. And I said, I said what I've just said there about back in the day when I started this, I would give my website figures and my newspaper circulation figures. But then after a few years, that then changed to, okay, so we want your newspaper figures, we want your website figures, but we also want to know how many social media followers your publication's got. And then it went one step further, and it was like, so we want to know your newspaper figures, your website figures, the social media figures for your publication, but we also want to know how many followers you've personally got on social media. The next question surely was going to be, what's your inside leg measurements and your shoe size? I mean, what relevance really that has in the grand scheme of things when I don't really use my social media anyway all that much? Anyway, that's by the by. So as I said, in this conversation with this PR, and I won't name him because that's not fair, but he's a listener of the podcast, so he knows who he is. He said, I think it's quite short sighted that their focus be purely on chasing the numbers, chasing the reach that these influencers or content creators have got. And this isn't me bashing content creators or influencers. I've got quite a lot of friends who are content creators and influencers, and they're very good at what they do. And I don't, that they work very hard. But I think you're right. We know as motoring journalists that when we see content online, 9 times out of 10 published by an influencer, uh, published by an influencer.
We're recording. Bye-bye.
The joys of running podcasts from home. Yeah. Anyway, so we know as motoring journalists, when we see an influencer or a content creator publishing content about a car that they've tested, and it's all positive. I don't know how to put this.
You're trying to be a PR. You're trying to be diplomatic, aren't you?
I am. I'm trying to. I'm wearing my PR hat here. How do I say this without
I wouldn't
potentially landing myself with a massive
listen,
backlash?
don't overthink it. I think you should just say it as it is. I mean, a lot of content creators say it as it is.
Right. Okay. It's okay. This is a safe space. Okay. So, all right.
Yeah.
I'll say it as it is. We know it's absolute guff what it is that they're saying, and they're only saying positive things because they're getting paid to say positive things. Essentially, they've been told what to say by the manufacturer. There's no ifs and buts about it. Now, what worries me, and I'll put my Car Buying Coach UK hat on now, right? I worry that people who are trying to buy cars see that content on social media, and that makes their mind up, yes, I'm definitely going to go for that car. Then they get that car, and then they're stuck with that car for several years because they can't get out of the finance deal they're on, and it is not as they expected it to be because said influencer or content creator has just absolutely bigged it up beyond belief. I would like to think that, and as you said before, Tim, we are paid by publications to give our honest opinion. And this is a question. If I got £1 for every time I was asked this by friends, by family, or just people who take a genuine interest in what it is that I do when I'm down the pub or whatever, they ask me, can you say bad things about the cars you review? And I say, yes, I can, because I'm not a content creator and I'm not an influencer. And it would be wrong and immoral of me for me just to say positive things. However, and there is a caveat here. I didn't come down in the last rain shower, right? And I'm not naive enough to think that if I'm Jeremy Clarkson, right? Jeremy Clarkson can get away with absolutely hammering a car. I can't, is the reality of things. Okay. I need to keep a roof over my head and I need to keep my bills paid and food in my children's mouths. And if I was to really go to town on a car, I would never get a car. And the likeliness is word would spread amongst PRs because they're very close to one another from brand to brand. And I probably wouldn't get access to cars again. So that always plays in the back of my mind when I do want to say something negative, because I'm thinking about the longevity of the relationship. And the crazy thing is, going back to the relationships that I've got with PRs, I can honestly say, and I say this with my hand on my heart, I genuinely think that I've got good relationships with the PRs that I speak to on a regular basis. The one thing that I pride myself on is never over promising and under delivering when it comes to coverage. Okay. I will always under promise and over deliver. And I'm proactive. I'm not reactive. I don't wait for a PR to come to me and say, hey, could we see the coverage that you gave of that particular vehicle? As soon as that review goes live, I send them the link. Hey, just to let you know, the review's gone live. Here's the link. I send them the link to the publications that I publish the reviews on, my own website, thecarbuyingcoach.co.uk. I send them links to even when we mention about them in the podcasts. And we have done, we've spoken about a lot of the cars that we drive on the podcasts since we started this. So, yeah, and that's why I feel that I've got good relationships with these PRs.
You
But
know
as I
what?
said, in the back of my mind, it does play on my mind. I'll give you an example.
Yeah,
Okay, sorry, Tim, and
go
I don't
for
want
it.
to go on a rant, so I'll pass over to you in a sec. I've had a vehicle on test recently, the Ford Ranger MSRT, and the marketing chap at MSRT arranged a loan via Ford for me, and I'm very grateful to him for that. Very grateful to the Ford team as well for arranging the loan. What's more, I'm even more grateful to the guy at MSRT and to the Ford team for actually extending the loan of the vehicle.
Mm.
I was meant to have it for 2 weeks, and just before the 2 weeks was up, I'd had a little bit of a niggly issue. It wasn't an issue with the car by any means. It was a setting on the car, and it was the rear diff had locked on it. And it wasn't
Okay.
particularly nice to drive. It was very juddery, which is understandable when the rear diff locks. But I didn't put that on. The vehicle had arrived with me and it had been on. And I was thinking, oh my God, I don't know how on God's earth I'm going to write this review, because it it's awful to drive. Like, it's awful. I can't say a positive thing about how it drives. Anyway, to cut a very long story short, I got in touch with the MSRT team and said, listen, I've got this issue. And I said, I think it might be the rear diff lock. They said, it sounds like that. They told me how to turn it off. I turned it off. Problem solved. Okay. They felt for me that I'd endured it for so long, so much so they said, hey, would it be of use to you for us to extend the loan? I said, please, that would really, really be helpful, which they did. So very, very grateful. But back to the car, my review of the vehicle and the review of it. What a fantastic looking pickup truck. Absolutely fantastic. If you're unfamiliar with the Ford Ranger MSRT, Google it. It's what's known as a street racer pickup truck. So it's got a lowered suspension, bigger alloy wheels on it, a bit of a body kit on it, and it looks the part. It doesn't half look the part. Um, And inside, yeah, nice cabin with all the mod cons, which is great. And as I said, I did have this little niggly issue with it, which was resolved. But despite that issue being resolved, the vehicle, because it had the bigger alloy wheels on it and it had the lowered, stiffer suspension on it, there were compromises with the ride quality. If I'm being honest, more so at lower speeds, very kind of judgery over imperfections in the road surface. Um, it needed weight in the back end of it. And if I'm going to be honest, it's a commercial vehicle at the end of the day. And I would like to think most people who buy it for commercial purposes would have weight in the back of it, which would solve a lot of the problems, the ride quality issues. Excuse me. Um, but yeah, so then somebody had said to me whilst I had it on tests, I went to the pub and somebody had said to me, I absolutely love that Ranger MSRT. It looks the business. I said, it does, doesn't it? You know, it is a great looking vehicle. So what's it like to drive? And I said, it's good. It's all right to drive, but if I'm being honest, at lower speeds, the ride quality is a little bit, is compromised because of the lowered stiffered suspension. But once you get it up to speed and on a motorway, for example, because I came down to SMMT in it, it's perfectly fine. It's perfectly fine, and it's quite a pleasant place to be. The bolstered seats kind of hug you, and it is comfortable on those longer journeys. And they said, okay, just out of curiosity, then, when it comes to writing your review, are you going to say those negative things about the ride quality? And I said, yeah. And they went, oh, well, how are they going to react? And I said, well, I'm not the first to say it because this vehicle's been out for a while now, and plenty of other people have reviewed it before me. So it's certainly not going to be news to uh, MSRT or to Ford. Um, but and this person said, "Well, how does it affect your relationship with those brands?" And I said, "Well, it's been balanced, you know, and it's like as parents, and this is a funny analogy to use, right? But I use this analogy when I was describing how you manage relationships. So it's like when your kid you're giving your kid feedback. In your mind you want to say, well, you didn't do that right, but you can't just go straight in with a nope, you did that wrong, because obviously it's not going to do anything for the self-esteem, the confidence. So as a parent, you say, I thought this was fantastic that you did, and I thought you did this really well. Next time you may want to think a little bit about doing this. So you kind of sandwich positive, you sandwich it. That's how you package it up. And the self-same thing, I feel, applies to reviewing cars. If I was to go to town and pull the vehicles to shreds, as I said, I wouldn't get any access to any more cars, and my relationships would be gone. So that's not to say that I'm trying to find positive things to say for the sake of finding positive things. And sometimes it's really, really hard to find something that is a negative, or, and the thing is,
Can
it's
be.
subjective. I drive a vehicle. I might think this is the best car I've ever driven, or it's the worst car I've ever driven, or whatever. Or it's all right. You might drive it, Tim, and you might go, that's the car that I thought was the best ever is the idea of your worst ever, and vice versa.
I mean, it all comes down to, I mean, it's like that saying, isn't it, about beauty being the eye of the beholder and all that. Or was it one man's meat is another man's poison, all those old fashioned sayings. But yeah, when it comes to relationships, I mean, you've illustrated it really well there, actually, regarding that particular vehicle, which I saw, and I will agree it's a good looking uh,
Mm,
commercial vehicle. But anyway, when it comes to any kind of relationship, whether it's your local shopkeeper or whether you just choose to shop online, um, whether you like to see people in person, whether you like to speak with someone on the phone, or whether you just prefer to stick to messaging, whether that be direct message, WhatsApp, or email, whatever. I understand that, that someone who is effectively there to publicize a car, a brand, isn't going to be able to speak with every content creator, every journalist, etc., every wannabe, etc. There are some very, very, how can I put this? very proactive brands at the moment who are great day to day for me, actually. I mean, it's been, for Britain, it's been quite hot, quite hard to work. It's at the moment of recording, it's half term for a lot of people. So I've had kids, needing taxi rides from me when I'm trying to concentrate on stuff. And quite frankly, I could do without having to look for the coverage that I've created. But I always think as a freelancer, it's quite good to be able to send the coverage that I have created to the manufacturer, to the PR that was kind enough to invite me on an event or lend me a car or whatever it might have been. And today I sent a bunch of stuff off, and I was quite surprised. I got 3 PR people come back and said, "Thanks so much, Tim. Really appreciate it." And then one from the back of that again said, "By the way, what would you like next? Because we'd love to lend you another car." So that was a good example of a good relationship. Yeah, all right. I've got 2 or 3 that have just had out of offices. It's normal this time of year to have that, and a
Mm.
couple where I've just had tumbleweeds. But hey, people are busy.
It's amazing how many
Yeah,
times as well, though, if you're proactive and you send them coverage, it's amazing how many times that you don't hear back to say, "Oh, you know what? Thanks for that," or whatever.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
that's still quite a surprise.
Oh yeah,
If I'm going to go to the trouble of digging out the links and sending them to you and etc., then it's nice. PR's take
yeah.
note. It's nice just to receive a response and cheers, thanks for that. I'll have a look.
Yeah,
That's it.
I
That's
mean,
all you
I
need to
was
say.
out. Yeah, absolutely. I was out at a launch this week abroad, and I was speaking to the very nice PR guy, and you forget you're a journalist and you're a PR. And that's the beauty when you get that sweet spot when you just 2 people talking, and it's he was saying to me that at the end of the day, having worked in PR, I know that there are agencies that will monitor media coverage and feed that back to the PR people. I know that
Yeah.
journalists will often go, "No, I'm not going to send them my coverage. It's their job to find it." However, this guy said, "No, I really like it when I get it from the journalist because it just
Mm.
adds that extra layer of that relationship." But on top of
Yeah.
that, the people that we pay ridiculous amounts of money to cover and monitor the media, whether that's social, whether it's online, whether it's traditional print, whatever it might be, broadcast TV, whatever, doesn't always find it. It doesn't. So
Yeah.
so I find as sort of an end part of my relationship, if I've been invited on an event, write about the car, write about the product, whatever it might be, the experience, if it's a sort of more of a travel feature around a
Mm.
vehicle. I always think as a freelancer, the least I can do is then send my coverage because it's kind of the last piece of the jigsaw in that cycle of that relationship. So it's really interesting hearing that firsthand. But also, uh, you know, there are some people who would argue that you could become too proactive, hassling people all the time. So, but you can't just sit back and wait for these things to come to you either. So I think,
I don't see it as hassling though.
mm,
I'm of the same belief as you and the same mindset as you. I think it is the final piece of the jigsaw, and if
mm,
anything, I think it's a good opportunity to keep the conversation going, to keep the
mm,
conversation live. And say thanks again for inviting me on that event or giving me access to that vehicle. What can I have access to next, or what other events have you got lined up? And it keeps the conversations ticking along nicely. I don't think it should ever be. I don't agree with journalists saying, well, they employ businesses to dig out this data and the links for them, so let them crack on themselves. I don't agree with that. I think that's very pig-headed,
yeah.
and that doesn't surely can't do your relationships any good. But at the same time, I don't think that any PR would feel like we were hassling them if we were to send them links of coverage. Um, so yeah, I mean, after all this ranting about PRs, ranting about content creators and influencers, we're probably going to have court cases on our hands, Tim. We're probably never going to get any more commissions again. And this is probably the end of our journalism careers, in all honesty. We've probably properly shot ourselves in the foot.
I
But
think we're
this is
just
what this
being
podcast
honest.
is. We are.
Yeah.
This is what this podcast is about. It's an honest, open conversation between two pals who just so happen to be in the same line of work. We work for different types of publications. We work with different audiences. We often cover different types of vehicles. But we have a lot of common ground, and that's what kind of makes this podcast what it is. And I love chatting about it. And as I going back to what I said about the feedback that we've been getting, when we've been going on launches or when we attend events like SMMT Test Day, has been really positive, and so
It
I'm great.
has.
We are both grateful for that. So
It,
we're not calling anybody out,
no,
by any
not by
means.
any means. No.
But it's just the reality of the industry, and I want people to know that it isn't, necessarily what you think it is, and these are some of the challenges that we face. But
Yeah.
there are some really great. Is that my cat meowing?
There was some kind of a meow going on just there. Even your cat has agreed with you on this one,
Stop
Adam.
it! Stop it! What are you meowing for? Shh. Sorry. There's a PR page you to it's a PR page you to disrupt. Sorry about that. Yeah. So if it's
Um,
not people coming through your door, it's my cat meowing
I was going
behind
to
the door.
say,
Apologies.
so I think look, it's all about relationships. So
Yeah.
I think I may have said this on another episode that it is, yes, we're talking about a product. It happens to be a car. All right. Talking about a brand, what it says about you if you drive a certain brand, or what it doesn't say about you. It's all
Mhm.
sorts of things. Hence why, I do quite a bit of work with lifestyle media. So it isn't necessarily about talking about the geeky aspects of what's underneath the engine or if it's an electric car. But at the same time, I have to know about that. So this launch I was on this week, it was weird, and I can't say too much because it's under embargo in terms of the driving impressions. But the Alpine A390 GTS had its global media drive in Italy this week,
Mhm.
and it was great. And I was out on the Alpine. I say Alpine, I should say Alpine. I should say the Alpine A390 GT at the end of last year. So I could talk about the drive of that one. It's pretty brilliant, great electric car if you want a fast back, I should say. And well, they call it, Alpine calls it a racing car in a seat, which it is. But anyway, I won't go down the road too much about talking how it drove. It was a really, really good launch. I was with we were talking about legacy brands earlier. I mean, I was with some legacy media. So I was driving with a guy, Rob Lewis, from The Sun. We
Yes, I know
had,
Rob.
yeah,
Yeah.
we had Tatler there.
I went I went I haven't seen Rob for a very, very long time, but actually I was writing a piece today and about the used prices of in North America. Because
Mm,
I was writing for a North American publication, the used prices of Jaguar F types, the
mm.
last V8 kind of sports car from the brand, and they are really really reasonable in North America. I don't think they are here, to be fair. But I was digging through some pictures to put into my article, and I went on the launch of the F Type R75, and there was the F Type 75. So one was the V8, the 5 liter V8, and one was I don't know, off the top of my head, I can't remember. My head's absolutely fried at the minute. Anyway, one was a convertible, one was a coupe. And so I was using pictures. But anyway, I'm going around the houses here. I don't even know why I'm telling you all this detail and you don't need to know it. But Rob, I believe it was Rob Lewis, was on that trip with me. And we went to Sitges near Barcelona, and we drove from Sitges to San Sebastian on the opposite side of Spain in 2 days, which is quite a trek in these wonderful, iconic British sports cars, and it was great. Anyway, what were you saying? What were you saying,
Well,
Tim? Sorry.
I was just thinking that, sort of talk about legacy brands with cars. You got the legacy media at this launch. So, big now. I mean, I'm sure you can get older, but Tatler's been around for, was it 17 something or 18 something it originally came out? So you got Tatler there, The Sun, all sorts of other traditional media outlets, as well as some sort of fairly recent online outlets too that will focus purely on and that are focused on electric cars only. But it was a really lovely, very well balanced event, and I noticed that there was going to be, a social media event, I think next week. So I do think that car brands, the publicity element, they're looking at maybe not mixing social media influencers, content creators with journalists. They're having separate launches now. Some are still mixed, but
Yeah.
I still think they're trying to find the way that works the best because, the media, as I said right at the beginning of the podcast, it's changed. It's always changed. I mean, we'll go all the way back to radio, and how that changed things. But um, it is a way of finding the way through, trying to work out the best way of getting their voice heard above the noise. I mean, we're adding to the noise, just this podcast, aren't we, I suppose? But
We are,
it's
yeah.
very niche now, lots of very tiny niche ways of consuming media. So is it about, like you were saying earlier, the readership figures you had, or is it now about, you know, my kids who only consume their media on their phones? It's not just the kids. I mean, I do it, to be honest, half
Yeah,
the
it's
time. I don't
is it
know.
how much noise you can make? And
Yeah, I mean,
I
talk about a car. I mean, I'm like you saying right earlier on. I'm not going to ever go out of my way to say a car is crap. And very, very, very few cars are crap. I mean, I don't care as long as the car works. It looks quite nice. At the end of the day, you're going to spend more money on a car than you are anything other than a house. So
yeah,
it's nice to have something you like. So I get it, and it's an investment, and it's about safety as well. These things are killers at the end of the day. 2 tons of metal in the wrong hands, it's going to go horribly
yeah,
wrong. So a car equals freedom for me. That's why I've always liked cars. I haven't necessarily ever been all about the technical side. It's just how they make me feel, and that's why I still love them. And that's why I'm quite prepared, and you are, to do this passion project, this podcast. So I don't think it's wrong to talk about the industry and about how the people that make a living, outside of this podcast, we spend a lot of time, like your brain, you just says fried, mine's fried, in terms of you do a 2-day launch in Italy, you fly out there, you drive 2 hours back from the airport or whatever it is, and you still got your work to write up the next day. It's not that difficult really, but it's tiring.
mm,
So to sometimes find that a relationship that might have been fairly smooth, fairly fluid once, suddenly isn't because of the shifting landscape. And I think that's all that we've been talking about, really. And the SMMT test day used to be a very good point in the year to be able to catch up on relationships that perhaps weren't as solid as they could be.
mm,
But there are other ways now, lots of other ways to meet people. I mean, some people feel like they've had a social life because they've been online. Um,
yeah,
you and I are
yeah.
talking 200 miles away from each other right now. But
Yeah, and
that's how it goes.
yeah. So that's got something that you touched on there. A couple of things you touched on there. The mixing of influencers, content creators, and journalists on press events. I go on some, and it's purely just journalists. I go on some, and it's just influencers. I've even been, excuse me, on the odd one where I've been the only journalist and they've been all content creators and influencers. So yeah, I think it's some brands are still trying to work out what the best way to work it is. And from a journalist perspective, we're not the type, but there are some journalists out there that'll look down their nose and be quite snooty with the content creators and influencers if they were to mix on a launch. Um, Likewise, there's bound to be influencers and content creators who'd be quite snooty with journalists. So I don't know what's right and what's wrong. I get on with them fine. I've got time. It's in, I going back to the Polestar event that we went on recently, the Polestar 3. I shared a car, or cars, 2 cars during the day with an influencer, content creator, and I learned a lot from that day with him, and I really enjoyed our time together. He made the day for me, if the truth be told, and I still need to get on to him about actually being a being a what do they call it, being a guest on the Kickin Tyres podcast. But he's a busy man, as are we. But anyway, the second point that you said about being tired and getting back off launches, that's part of the reason why we're trying to keep this one shorter, Tim's just got back today. He's been writing all day. I've been writing all day. It's actually just after 9 o'clock now. I've not had my dinner. And I started work at about 8 o'clock this morning, and I've only taken a very, very brief break before we started recording this podcast. So it's been full on.
No one is going to feel sorry for us because it still sounds like an awesome job. And as I've said before, it's not like going down a coal mine, but all jobs have their demanding elements. And when you are freelance, you do tend to have to sing for your supper. But I think there's a bit of a kick. Well, I certainly get a bit of a kick from it. And, it's, will you get paid? Will you not? It's almost like I guess how a salesman might feel.
Yeah.
But like I keep saying, having worked in PR, you will understand some of that must feel like sales because you are trying to get the attention of people and you're trying to get coverage, aren't you, for whatever it is you are PRing.
Yeah.
So there you go. You go full circle now into why bother with all that when you can pay to get people to say good things. And I've been getting adverts through saying, oh, for £10 a month, we can publish. Have you got a business? Oh, just pay us £10 a month and write what you like and guarantee you we'll publish it. So that's happening now as well.
I've
And it used to
seen
be.
those adverts as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it was like
Yeah.
advertorials, the old days of advertorials
Yeah.
where people would pay to something to look like editorial, but it was actually an advert disguised as editorial. That's been going on for years. So it all comes down to credibility. We've been pretty damn honest on this. And like we have always said, we are actually the only sponsor we have is the car buying coach, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we don't have any influence from a brand that's sponsoring us. So
we don't get
we are
paid for
just
this
saying,
either.
no,
Yeah.
saying it as
It's a
is.
question I was asked recently. Somebody said to me, "Are you getting paid? Is it making good money?" The podcast. I was like, "It's not making any money. It is a labor of love." So yeah, let's not hide the fact that we're doing this because we want to do it, because we enjoy doing it. We're proud to do it. We've had some amazing feedback. We're certainly not doing it for the money because there is absolutely no money. As Tim said, the podcast is powered by the Car Buying Coach UK, which is my business. That's another hat that I wear. This is season one of the podcast, or series one, whatever you want to call it. We're hoping to get 10 episodes under our belt. We're halfway. We're at that midway point now. This is our 5th episode. And we need to take stock of kind of what we've achieved, once we've got those 10 episodes under our belt. And hopefully we'll be in a position to continue having conversations with potential sponsors, because we did have conversations with potential sponsors prior to the very first episode. And again, for the benefit of transparency, people weren't bloody willing to take a risk on us, were they, Tim? To
They
take a
weren't.
gamble on us, two old codgers whinging about PRs. No wonder they wouldn't put the money behind us.
No wonder. Listen, all the hats you've just been speaking about that you wear.
I've got too many hats. Got a wardrobe full of them.
Brings me back to anyone that's been vaguely kind of watching this, so you probably can't see. It's very subtle. But you could maybe call me someone that's a paid influencer now. Unwittingly.
Black t-shirt, black cap, you can tell you've just come back from Milan.
You can tell.
You absolute fashionista. I'm going to start calling you Gokwan to go with that gin that you've got up on that shelf up there.
Well, I just want to say, yes, you can see up there. Yeah, I haven't been sort of this is not a deliberate advertisement actually, but I got a very nice baseball cap because my slap was burning on top of the burning that I had at SMMT, and Alpine happened to have a baseball cap in the car. Very subtle. You see the old Alpine logo. I'm not trying to point it out for any other reason. I just think baseball
I know
caps
exactly why you're trying to point
me.
it out. You're trying to point it out to wind me up. So, listeners, watchers, I bend over backwards for Tim. I'm always doing him favours. I'm always saying, "Oh, I'll do that for you, Tim." "Oh, don't worry about that, Tim." Always accommodating him. I didn't, I don't expect much from him, but a cap, when you come back from Milan, would have been very nice. That's all I'm
And
going to say.
I could have hand delivered it because I'm sort of going up your way, up
You're in
north.
my neck of the woods tomorrow. But you
Hey,
know what? I
eh,
was going to say it would have been nice to have caught up with you for 15 minutes. Sod you.
but I'm now
Sod
dead to
you.
you, aren't I? Because of that bloody
You
cat.
are.
See,
You're off my.
our relationship, it's in the ground now, Adam.
It's in
After
the
all that,
ground. Well, our careers are in the ground after this episode. So our relationship's in the ground. Our careers are in the ground. Yeah, you're off my Christmas card list as far as I'm concerned,
oh,
Tim. So yeah,
do people still send Christmas cards? That could be the next thing we
no,
speak about.
no,
They don't bother, do
no.
they?
No, but we've covered SMMT. We've covered the press trip that you've just got back from. We've covered a car that I had on test, the Ranger MSRT. We've talked about the fact that you've shafted me by not bringing me a cat back from Milan. We've absolutely hammered PRs. We've hammered influencers and content creators. Basically, we're not going to get any more work. We're not going to have any friends in this game anymore, and we've fallen out. So I
Well,
think 50 minutes in, it's after 9 o'clock at night. I'm hangry, and yeah, I think we
and you've
call it a
lost
day.
it, and
I've
you've
lost the
lost
plot.
it.
I've absolutely lost it.
I
Absolutely,
think also we have praised PRs though, haven't we?
we
To be
have. Yes.
fair, we've been
Thank
very
you.
balanced
Yeah.
in our views.
Yeah, thank you very much to the PRs who are our favourites. You know who you are. Um, you're on our Christmas card lists. To the PRs that ghost us, think twice about your next move because I'm watching.
You never know where you might end up next, Adam. Who
Oh,
knows?
gosh.
Who
Yeah.
knows?
Hopefully it's not here.
But I'll tell you something though. It's been good to have a chinwag. This wasn't, as probably most people can tell, scripted. But we did have about how many tries at this before it actually worked? 4 or 5?
4 or 5 cracks at trying to get this to work. We had a problem with Tim's mic, which seems to have resolved itself, although on a couple of occasions towards the back end of the recording, stop stroking that. Towards the back end of this recording, you've gone a little bit, you've glitched a little bit.
Well,
Not audio, the visual. So hopefully that's all fine.
could just be me glitching. Who knows?
Yes.
Well, listen, I think we've both lost the plot in this heat and lack of sleep. So I guess we should say cheerio until the next episode, which it is going to happen in a couple of weeks' time when you're abroad
I'm
potentially.
going on holiday a week on Monday, and we're meant to be recording an episode whilst I'm on holiday, but I can't take this mic, these headphones, my camera, etc. with me. So we might have to either do it next week or hold off until the week after, which
We'll
holding off till the
find a
week after
way.
we'll find a way.
Yeah, you've got to have a holiday. You can't not. I mean,
I'm
I
not
think you
saying I'm
deserve
not
one.
going on holiday to record an episode. Those words never came out of my mouth. What I said was we'll either have to record it a week early or a week late. Plain and simple as that. My cat's hungry. I'm hungry. You're annoying me. I'm going.
It's been a pleasure as always, Adam. You know?
Yeah. Love you too. Yeah.
Love you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.